Alrighty, hello everybody folks, and good morning. Welcome to my favorite use case here for the Vartan for today's synergy of the day. So, the Vartan's a class that's got really high movement and a kind of inbuilt tri-bred setup, where they've got access to ranged physical, or ranged melee and magic type stuff, as well as an instill that'll give an extra 25% give or take on whatever they end up hitting through their El Colas down here. So, one build that I've been really liking recently is going and putting the Dragon Slayer set on here. Actually, a lot of this build is going to be put together with a lot of parts that are a little bit less commonly known. So, for example, with the Dragon Slayer set, the Spark Guard boots aren't listed as a dragon item, but they do count as part of the Dragon Slayer set. And this allows for Dragon Slayer on the Vartan here, which is an interesting combination when you're going and combining that with El Colas Winds as well as the Ajmak. So, heavy crossbows have a tendency to drop fairly often later on in the game. Like this time through, I think I got like 5 or 6 of them from the one run of Palace of the Dead. And just in general, you know, this class is really good at taking advantage of a lot of those elemental crossbows, especially a case like this where he's already set up to be a tri-bred, and if we switch him into the water element, he can essentially be a, you know, full-blown, minus debuffs, you know, standard elemental wizard type, while also essentially being a dragoon, while also being an archer at the same time, and using his high movement to be able to get his choice of cards. Now, the interesting synergy here is that the Ajmak in particular comes with a dragon bonus. You know, pretty much if you've gotten a couple of these crossbows, you're already going to see that pretty decently up there. And this also can be combined with that Instill and Dragon Slayer effect for a very cheap way to apply the Dragoon effect at long range without necessarily having to sacrifice anything. So for example, like let's say he does 1800 against this guy, so we'll just go ahead and pop a shot right there, and we'll notice that the secondary hit did an extra 450 on there. So he was essentially shooting a 2200 off of a 35 MP investment. So this is a combination that I personally find a lot more easy to use than something like the Dragoon, because you don't necessarily have to get close. The Vartan is basically a class that's able to have extremely wide access to a large portion of the map. The crossbow gives them exceptionally long range, and on top of that, Dragon Slayer is a very cheap ability. In the meantime, they can also, you know, pretty comfortably take advantage of different defense types, so if something's more resistant to their crossbow, for example, they switch over into casting. If they're going around, you know, they're picking out those cards that nobody else has really picked up, I mean, they are kind of a vulture kind of class here, then they can just simply, like, let's say they picked up a bunch of crit cards, and that would work with a Dragon Slayer, but there's no dragons on the map, you know, he can basically be a really long-range wizard kind of thing. Because stats are fairly uniform across the board, this means that he'll still function pretty effectively, just in that other role. So, either way, a fun one to play around with. This is also especially handy if you're going and recruiting dragons, like right here, wherein you can basically just go and get them reduced to whatever amount that you'd like. It's a little bit of a tailorable thing, like where if you are having that issue where, you know, you're not getting your dragons down to a very particular amount, you can't hit them twice with the Dragon Slayer, or they're just being a bit of a pain on the other end of the map, you can just kind of quickly go and pop them one and, you know, get back to it. So, hopefully this was helpful,